Heavenly Father, we praise you, thank you. We had a beautiful day to now, and now we gather once more to study your word, to continue our line of thought, to continue these studies. Heavenly Father, we ask you to guide us through your Holy Spirit, that we may understand, that we may discover the truth, through your guidance in your will. In Jesus' name we ask you. Amen. Okay, who would like to give a little resume of what we did in the first class this morning? So we can settle into what we've been saying, remember what we've been saying.
I can try.
Yes, go ahead, brother, please.
Okay, so this morning we were talking about correcting all the topic that you started us on with this morning / afternoon was correcting the errors of the movement. And we were talking about how there are errors in the movement which are just basically established truths of different doctrines or light that has come across our way, and we had gotten established in them. But after some time, or even currently, we have seen that going back on in some of these topics or some of these areas that we had been established in the truth, we are able to see that maybe our understanding was not complete or was incorrect or something to that effect. And we had a list of some of those errors, and the ones that I noted were, we have one which is under the topic of midnight cryiness, under the understanding that we haven't gotten into that yet, but that's one of the ones that was noted. We talked about some of the understandings of different things being half wrong and half right. For example, on aspects of the 2300-day prophecy, there's some aspects that are right and aspects that are wrong. We even have another one on the board where we talked about the true and the counterfeit, where we have some aspects of different lines being true, and we have the counterfeit underneath there showing what the Roman Catholic Church has done, giving a specific example on the board. Another one was rejection of time, where we accepted, we were not accepting of time in the past, but now we're saying that that is perhaps something we should be doing, and I believe it is something we're doing. And there's also the 2520. We haven't gone into that. There's rejection of the repenting, we haven't gone into that. There's the year 2021, we haven't gone into that yet. We talked about the 10 tribes briefly, which is the journey of the 2 sticks. And we have not gone into that. So that is what I would say was like a little bit of.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anyone wants to add to this, or you think this is fairly complete what he said? I think he did a good resume, right? This is more or less what we've been seeing. So let's go into this line. The topic of half right, half wrong. It's based upon a presentation that has been done by Brother Pippinger recently in Arkansas, and already previously he had showed us this logic, and the logic goes like this: that we have a look on Millard history. In Millard history, you can see in the history of Snow and Miller a development of truth. But mixed with the truth, there's also an error. The truth is the setting of time for October 22nd, 1844, but the error is that the event was expected wrong. It was the wrong event that they set for this date. All right, so you have truth and you have error that come together at the same event, that are developed in this movement. This does not make this movement a wrong movement at all, because what my sister asked me after the first class is, it sounds a little bit weird, because you say there's error and there's a mixture of error and truth, something that the devil likes to develop, mixture of error and truth. But when did they realize the truth after they stepped in this era, 22nd of October 1854. When was it corrected? On that mirrored line. When did it come to realization what the error was?
That same year.
Hmm?
That same year.
That same year, or you could even say the next day. Yeah, when Edson had the vision in the cornfield. It is when the process of realization of the error started. So they immediately got it right. Okay. Nevertheless, there was an error. Not everything they taught was totally correct. This was in this line here, and then we said a parallel, or we saw this parallel to the second part of the history, starting 1863, where the church changed, where the movement changed to the church, and there we realized we have a similar history when Wagner and Butler had this contention about the law in Galatians. And regarding this issue or this conflict, Ellen White tells us that none of them had the full truth. None of them had the perfect truth. So this is why we say, okay, here's something similar. We had two people. We have two leaders of this movement. One leader representing the traditional church. Here Miller, the one who led the movement from the beginning. Here Butler, who represents the organized church. And then you have this new man, Wagner, coming in. You had here this new man, Snow, coming in, bringing in a new information that changed, that challenged what they had taught, but neither of them was totally correct. Okay? Nor was Butler totally wrong, nor was Wagner totally right. And this is the information that Ellen White is giving us through the angel that announced that this was the case. Okay, so we have here this development, we have this development. In both situations we see that there was an issue, and it was not totally correct what they have seen. And the question was also from my sister, why are we even studying this? Why is this something? Why is it an important study? Why would we deal with the error? The error, by the way, is something that all Adventists know. Yeah, it's not something mysterious or hidden or new to us. Yeah, it was the error that's on the chart, right? We have all the time been speaking about this error, the error that was hidden by the Lord, and then in this chart now it's revealed. Okay, this is also what is marked by this year 1850. And by the way, does anyone remember when the chart was produced? What month? The 1850 chart, not the 40. I think we have the date, but I only remember the month, which was November. Okay. Well, and then the question, why is this important? We come to this question, and we come to the conclusion of this. So why is it important? Why are we even looking at this half right, half wrong problem? Then we jumped into the counterfeit history. The counterfeit history is something new that we've been discovering. We see a very similar history in the Catholic Church. They also had a reform movement that started in 1899 and was to be finished in 1945. This is basically the history of who? Of the Catholic Church, but who? The Catholic Church. It's under guidance of Pope, of a specific Pope, exactly. So I had the question, who were the popes involved? And the Pope in this history involved is Pope Pius XII. And before Pope Pius XII, my brother said it was Pope Pius XI, and that he was correct. Pope Pius XI was the Pope before Pope Pius XII. This is not always the case, that you have the popes like in this way succeeding, but this was the case. But we're not speaking about Pope Pius XI, we rather speak of Pius XII, because he is the man who is basically shaping this history. And even if he wasn't a pope, his name is Pacelli, thank you. So Pacelli, he was not a pope yet, but he is somehow important since the beginning of history. And we have seen how the Catholics, they understand that his situation here in this story is not an accident, right? What happened with him on the very same day that the first appearance of Maria in Fatima came to be known? There was something they pointed out. He received, what was it called? Communion. Let me reread it. Yes. May 13th, 1917, in which Pacelli received episcopal consecration. Episcopal consecration. That was the very day that we have the first appearance in Fatima of Virgin of Fatima. The very same day he had his consecration in a different place, in a different area, not knowing nothing about this. And then he died October 13th, which was the anniversary, the 40th day of the last appearance of Fatima. So his life is within the first appearance. This is when he's consecrated, and then he dies at the last appearance of Fatima. And the Catholic see this as not an accident. It was divine providence. They understand. They believe. So this man, he is settled in this history as the reformer. He is what we would call the reformer in our history. And then my brother pointed out that, interestingly enough, from 1917 to 45 is 28 years, and from 1816, when Miller studied the message, the increase of knowledge was produced in our movements, to 1844 is also 28 years.
Can I just add another point there?
Of course.
Actually, from 1798 to 1844 is 46 years. And I know the number 46 is significant.
Yes, of course.
And that is also the same for the counterfeit line. From 1899 to 1945 is also 46 years.
From where? From 1899 to?
Yeah, to 1945. 1899? 1899, yeah, right there at the beginning.
Yes, exactly.
No,
it's
the counterfeit line, I know. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
9-4. Yes, exactly. Yes. Okay. There's obviously more to it that we can see. This is a reform line here, and this reform should have been produced through what? What was to produce the reform movement in the Catholic Church? What was it that should have produced the reform in the Catholic Church? What message was it? Said it. Yes, the message of Fatima. Yeah, the message of Fatima is what we would call the counterfeit of the Three Angels message. Yeah, it's their Three Angels message. And now this man, Pacelli, or Pope Pius, how did he relate to the Fatima message?
He did not believe it initially.
Okay, so he didn't believe it initially, but
he went around trying to accomplish the task, the Fatima message. Which is
yes. How did he accomplish the task? Or how did he try to accomplish it?
by attacking communism.
Yes. He decreed, or he released a decree against communism. You could not be any longer communist and Catholic. Yes. If you were communist and Catholic, you were excommunicated. He fought communism in the Second World War. And he also did something in regard to, do we have it here on the board? On the appearance in the caves. Covadairia, you remember that? What happened then? What is the Covadairia? this is where the miracle took place. The miracle that the young lady Lucy, right? She demanded, or she asked for, is where the sun started to dance, you know, and everybody saw it. So they started to believe what the children had seen, etc., etc. This is he acknowledged this as divine, yes, as correct, as really a real miracle given by the Mary of Fatima. So I also thought that he rejected the message. He rejected Fatima because he did not fulfill it in a way as John Paul II did it. All right, but looking into this more deeply, we see, yes, he accepted the message. He accepted it. The message, the Catholics understand that he accepted it, he defended the message. And therefore we see that he did something, he accepted the message for this time, like here there was a message that had to be accepted. So he was right in regards to the message, but he was wrong on something else. What was he wrong on? Now, sister, you remember? There was something he did wrong in this time period. Because what should have happened here at the end of this development? If this was a reform line, what should have happened here? What should have been the outcome for the Catholic Church?
They would have come out on the top.
They should have come out at the top. What does it mean? What would it mean to be on the top for the Catholic Church? To have power? What kind of power? How far would this power go? Exactly. You know, they're not happy with the Vatican, with Italy, with the Catholic world. Now the power they aim for is worldwide power, like during the 1,260 years. So this should have been the outcome, but it wasn't the outcome, right? Why was it not the outcome? They sat on the wrong beast. The church needs a beast to ride. You know, this is the beast here. Where is it? It is here. It needs a beast to ride on. The beast, it needs an army. And they chose an army. Which army did they choose? Germany. It looked good, right? It initially looked very promising, but they settled on the wrong beast. So Pacelli, what he did, he was half right, or partially right and partially wrong. Wrong beast, correct message. All right, so this is what we've seen regarding him. Then we also have, we also can jump into modern history. So these dates I take off, we have put them here only to see what the article was saying, where they recognize dates in the life of Pacelli being not accidental. Okay. Um, 1850, in this history too, November 1st, this is a link to our history. And I read from Wikipedia. On November 1st, 1950, sorry, it's a link, but it is 100 years later. 1950, of course. Pius XII defined the dogma of the Assumption of Mary, namely that she, having completed the course of her earthly life, was assumed body and soul into heavenly glory. The dogma was preceded by the 1946 encyclical Dei Pare Virginis Mariae. Okay, we don't need to go into this, but what he decides here, or he leads this dogma that Maria is godly. Yeah? She's in heaven. She ascended to heaven. So this is an important issue. This is basically when he completes the message, right? What happens to Maria at this point is the message is basically made full or is perfected. Likewise to our movement when the Millerite movement was sealed with the covenant. Okay, and then I would like to put here in parallel to this 1962. 1962 for Catholicism is a very important date because what started then was the Second Vatican Council. We also write Vatican II. What was the Vatican Council? Do you have any of you have an idea about what it was? What are the councils in the Catholic Church? What for? What did they decide on councils?
What Pope is going to be recognized?
What Pope is going to be recognized? No, there's not. Perhaps this is a type of council, but the big councils in the history of the Nicene Council, Doctrine? Yes. Usually they come together, the church comes together to decide to talk about doctrine. Yeah, if there are issues, they go and they study it. How long does the council take? In history, how long do the councils take? Any idea? Weeks, months, weekend? Years, right? This also took several years. Some took, I think, over decades. Yeah, this council took 3 years, from 62 to 65. But this was a council where they did not discuss on dogmatic issues. What has been addressed on the Vatican Council, Second Vatican Council? What were the issues? You have any ideas?
Was it to increase the intensity of counter-reformation?
Counter-reformation? Mm-hmm. We are in 1962.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. I don't know much about it either. But if you're speaking about counter-reformation,
Yeah.
in six.
Yeah, like to be more appealing
Okay.
in order to penetrate
Yes.
and finally take over.
Yes, I agree. So not the counter-reformation against the Lutherans like in the past, but there was an idea how to open the church, how to adapt more to the world as a methodology, a method of counter-reformation. I agree. So one of the things they came to decide on this council was that salvation can be found outside of the church. It doesn't have to be Catholic. It can be Anglican, it can be any other, it doesn't matter. This is some important decision they had taken. Generally a more open attitude towards the world, towards the lay people. Yeah? Incorporate laity into the church, in church activity, in church functions. So it's a very important step, but problematic. Problematic for the church until today. Because what does it mean if you open up yourself in such a way to a church like the Catholic Church?
What does it mean?
What does it mean if you put yourself in the position of the Catholic Church? What does such a decision mean? You have to reject what? You have to reject the history of a tradition, of over 1,000 years. You break with the behavior, You incorporate lay people now. Other people can decide, other people can participate. What about the Mass? What language was it read up to that point? Latin. Now it could be read in whatever language. So what the church did here at this point, it was a reformation, within the church, but it was a big step. It was almost too big. It's not accepted. It's fought until today. There's a current since then that fights against this. Does not want to implement it. There's this fight since then in the Catholic Church. And we see it, we understand it, this is a civil war within the Catholic Church. We have different streams. We have the traditionalists. And once again, remember that history here. You know, we have those that stand to the traditional point. They defend the ancient position, tradition, the pioneers of the church, the fathers of the church, how it used to be, the language. It has everything a meaning. And then now you have to change it. This is something like Wagner coming in with new ideas, trying to revolutionize everything. So this is a very problematic point. Regarding this Vatican II, do you have an idea about John Paul II's position towards the Vatican II? Was he in favor or was he against? He's against. But he was a pope who was traveling the world, he was open. Well, it looked like he was really opening up, right? To make contact, make friends, speak to young people. But he was actually against it. He's a traditionalist. What about Benedict? Pope Benedict? Yeah, also against. What about Pope Francis? He is positive. He's in favor of it. So what we have here, once again, we have a message, like here, you know, there's a message that has to be understood. This message of 1888 has to be understood. Here's a message, and this message is accepted and it's rejected. And we see that there is a pope now that is in favor of this message, so he's doing it right. He's defending the right message for them. The message that is to fulfill what they had planned, what they are aiming for. All right. Well, let's develop a little bit more this line. Here I would put 1989. Because 1989 they accomplish, finally, right? They accomplish what they have been trying to accomplish since then. They fight and they conquer the King of the South. And then you also have a book here. This is also something that Sister Tess points out, interesting point. You have a book previously to that, which is like that book here, you know, the year before, 87. A book written by Malachi Martin. We know one book of Malachi Martin in this movement, which is this book that we know, The Keys of This Blood. Anyone read this book just in case? Anyone had a read into this book? No? This is not the book. I just write it here. I erase it in a minute. The Keys of This Blood. You heard about this book? Why didn't you have a chance to read it? It is a book which I've heard about this book since I entered this movement. This brother Jeff has been speaking about this book. Why is this book so important? Why is it one of the books that we are suggesting in this movement to read? What information do we get from this book?
From the eyes of an insider.
Yes. Who was Malachi Martin?
He was a priest in the Vatican. He was
Yeah.
a high-ranking priest.
And in which order? Anyone knows? He belonged to what order?
Jesuit.
Yes, he was a Jesuit. Mm-hmm.
And he gives us an insight of how the papacy is planning to ascend into power, complete power.
Okay, you know, this book is about the struggle. He's speaking a lot about geopolitics, the geopolitical aims and procedure of the papacy. And thank you. What more? What else does he contribute? What else does he say that's important or is important to us, to our movement? He gives some inside information that is really in harmony what we have been understanding about Daniel 11:40 and forward. Okay, so he gives the perspective from a Catholic, describes what the Pope had done to conquer communism. All right. So he explains, he gives us the history, what happened, where he traveled, what measures they took, why, etc. And then how it is connected to this is also one important part of it, how what John Paul II did in order to fight communism, how this was connected to the apparitions or to the secrets of Fatima. How he makes this link. He speaks about the vision that he had when he was in the bed. That he had a supposedly, probably, John Paul II had the vision of the Covardiria. He had the same vision again when he was in bed after he was murder attempted. And they attempted to murder him. So and this helped him to understand that he was the Pope, that he had to fulfill Fatima's wish, and this is why he went out and he fought communism. All right. So this book is interesting for us from that standpoint, because of the information it contributes, it gives us. But there's another book that he wrote in that year, 87, and that book is called, let me see, it's about the Jesuits. The Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, and the betrayal of the Roman Catholic Church. So here the book that is released by him is the Jesuits. I believe that these books, at least the Keys of this Web, belong in your bookshelf, and you are fortunate because you can get it in English. You know. This book has been translated into Spanish only, no other language, only in Spanish, but you cannot find it. I've been searching it for years and it does not appear. There's one kind of bad scan someone did. It's a PDF, you can find on the internet. Many pages are mixed up and not correctly scanned, but you can find this book. It's not available on the market. And some years ago I was in Mexico City, and was talking about these things. And then one brother said, I've seen this book for sale. Like, how have you seen this book? Where have you seen it? Still now? Yeah, I think you can still buy it. So come on, how can you get this book? I'm interested. He says, yeah, I know where there's one book for sale still. And they said these brethren were aware of the importance of this book. They were not in the message, but they said when this book was released, it disappeared the same day from the market. So it came to the libraries. He got one, the young guy, he got one book. I don't know why he was aware of this book, interesting to him, he got it. And then others wanted to buy it and it was gone. Everywhere it was gone. Nobody has this book, nobody knows this book in Spanish. Went there and he knew one library and there was this one book and he got it for me. So this was for us, in Spanish it's a treasure to have it, to be able to read it. And you have it in English. So you should take advantage of these possibilities. So what they think that the Catholic, they bought the book back, so it's gone, it's not on the market. Anyway, so there's this book, and in this book, what he is saying in this book, it tells the story about the Jesuits. And how the Jesuits, how they accepted Vatican II and how they put it in practice. Vatican II supposedly has the same aims as the Jesuits have anyways. And it helped them to push forward what they have been trying to do all the years. Okay, it seems to be totally in harmony with the agenda of the Jesuit order or of the Society of Jesus order. So he speaks about this development and how this is something that the Jesuits have been pushing for. This is why they stand behind the Vatican II, and this is why the Pope Francis, he's standing behind Vatican II. So he's defending the true or the correct message. But returning a little bit, into this history. So when we put there 1989, when here the reform of the Catholic Church did not work out, when they did not become the world power who rules the world, because they failed to choose the correct beast. And what happened? What enemies did the Catholic Church have at this point? Just to recap. What were the enemies here, the big enemies for world power? The USSR. The USSR. And instead of killing this beast emerged as a superpower. All right? So they had still to deal with this beast. Even if they had fought against it, they were not able to kill it because Hitler was not able to kill this beast. So here again, this beast is being dealt with. And in this fight, 1989, they manage a victory. Okay, and why did they conquer this beast? Prophetically spoken, what did they make correct? What was the correct decision this time? They changed the army, they changed their beast, they changed using the United States, and this beast, yes, was able to give the deadly wound to the beast of the King of the South. All right? So they made something correct. They took a correct step into getting into the world dominion, But what did John Paul II made wrong? Because there are two things. There's also a message they have to fulfill. And what was his position regarding the message for that time? What was the message they had to defend, they had to support? I acknowledge it's a little bit difficult for us to put ourselves in the mind of Catholic. Yes, because we are speaking about, it sounds as if there's a reform line, which is for us is all connotated with positive things, you know. Now we try to put this model on top of the Catholic Church, as if there was a positive movement. It's not a good movement, but it's a correct movement within their logic, within their terms. It's a counterfeit, it's diabolic, yes, but it's still a counterfeit. There's the same logic. So from that perspective, we try to understand their history, right? And we see that their history aligns pretty perfectly with our history. So what was the message that they had to defend, that they had to hold to? We said it already. Fatima. Fatima was here. What do we have here?
To fulfill that mandate of consecrate Russia, which is communism.
And there's more to this, because what was the beginning of this reform line? There's not a message. This is the old message.
The same message. Yeah, I'm saying the same message.
That's the Vatican II.
Oh, Vatican II was
Yes.
how to exist in a modern world.
And they arrived at the modern world now.
Yeah.
So there's a new message for them for this time. All right? So there was Fatima for that time, which was partially accepted, partially rejected. Time developed, and there's the Vatican II. So now they have to accept Vatican II, and John Paul II did not. He chose the correct beast, but he did not accept the message. All right? What happened with John Paul II after? You remember a little bit how he developed? How was his acceptance after conquering communism? Have you seen what happened with him when he conquered communism? When he freed the communist states, he traveled into Poland, he traveled into Czechoslovakia, etc. How was he accepted or received? Very bad. Disappointing. His people, his Polonian, people, they did not go on the streets and accepted him as the freer or the savior. No, It was disappointing for him. So there was a decline of his acceptance in the societies, in the world, after what he had done, after he had freed them from communism. Why? Prophetically, you understand, this is why he rejected the message. There was this Pope who managed to conquer this beast, but at the same time he was stuck to the old way of thinking. There's all the issues they have with the gay issues, the issues with the abuse of children, issues of the role of the woman in the church, etc. These issues he stuck to the old, and the world had developed, and they really did not. The world did not feel in harmony with his ideas. He was sympathetic, but he was not. He did not fulfill. He did not accept the message of Vatican II. So this is why we say, I think this is what we can see here. He was half correct in choosing the beast, but he was half wrong in rejecting the correct message for that time. So we have here this Pope. And then we have Benedict. And Benedict also does not accept the message for that time. But Benedict is correct in doing something else. What does Benedict do? He takes an important, correct decision.
Is it his resignation?
Yes, his resignation. Why is his resignation correct? What does he do with his resignation or at his resignation? There's something correct about it.
Because now they are able to get Pope Francis who will propagate the Vatican II agenda.
All right, so I'm just trying to get you a little bit into this development, into this history, usually not very familiar to us. We have said that in the Catholic Church there's a civil war. Why is a civil war? The war is about Vatican II. If you want to say it just roughly, there's a new development, there's a modern Catholicism, and there's the old ones, the hardliners that are stuck to the old ideas and traditions. So John Paul II rejected Vatican II. Benedict rejected Vatican II. But what about Pope Francis? Yeah, he's Jesuit. Yeah, it's in harmony with the Jesuit agenda. So he's in favor. He wants to put in practice, and you can see it. Now the things that he has been doing, almost provoking, right, the whole church, like going to a Muslim, visiting them, kissing a Muslim's feet, etc. All these things, not willing to live as a king, as the popes used to live, not willing to drive around in a luxury car as the popes used to do. All these things, like demonstratively putting in practice Vatican II. Going down on a level with the people, supposedly, opening the church, starting a dialogue, etc. So we have here this development in the last three popes. And this is interesting and important to us because we'll come to some conclusions on that. Let me just check if I haven't forgotten any detail here. Okay. 1982, there's okay, 1989. You have the Vatican II, and then you have this fight in the Catholic Church. And in this fight, on one side you have the Jesuits, Society of Jesus. And then you see John Paul II fighting against the Jesuits. Okay, he cannot shut down the Jesuits like 100 years before or 200 years before, But he does something to fight against the Jesuits. Anyone has an idea what he did? Has heard what he did? He established another order as his order, as the order that has to control what's going on. This is the Opus Dei. The Opus Dei order,
What's that?
it's an order. It's an institution of the Catholic Church which teaches that everyone is called to holiness and that ordinary life is a path to sanctity. So, other than the Jesuits, in the Opus Dei you can be a lay people. Lay people can become part of the Opus Dei. And there are many, specifically leaders, political leaders in the world, which are Opus Dei. In the governments of the world, there are many Opus Dei men. So they do, similar to the Jesuits, they do the will of the Pope. Because the Jesuits, they're devoted to the Pope, right? They do what the Pope demands. They fulfill the Pope's plans, and they sneak, let's say, or into different positions and roles, etc., in world leadership to accomplish some things. Opus Dei is somehow similar. But it's not the same, it's not a church organization, and it's made of lay people and also of priests. It's a mixture, it's a little bit different. In 82, Opus Dei existed earlier, but I read it. Opus Dei was founded 1928, also in Spain, exactly like the Jesuit order in Spain, in 1928, by a Catholic saint, José María Escrivá, and was given final Catholic Church approval in 1950. So this is something else that we have here. Opus Dei. Final church approval of Opus Dei, 1950. By who? Pope Pius XII. All right. So Pope Pius XII, he does a lot of important things. And John Paul II made it a personal prelature. I don't exactly know what this means. A prelature in 1982. So, in other words, here it received an official recognition by the church, but here it was elevated in its rank. You know, it was something like the Jesuits' version for this Pope, for John Paul II. Right. So this shows us the fight within the church. There's a civil war. Vatican II, Jesuit, and then those that are opposing it. John Paul II, and then his order, the Opus Dei. All right? From New York Times, I read a little statement. This came out in 1982, article by the New York Times. It says, "It was the Second Vatican Council that unleashed liberal forces among the Jesuits, as it did in other church groups and among Roman Catholics in general. Many Jesuits were deeply involved in the preparations for the council from the moment it was conceived by John Paul the 23rd, by Pope John the 23rd, who relied heavily on the order for council." So, a little bit more information on that. Jesuits were involved from the beginning. They pushed this forward. This is their agenda. All right. Okay. So, Pope Francis, so this is basically, this is the line, development of half right, half wrong in our church. This is development of half wrong and half right in the counterfeit movement of the Catholic Church, where we can already see there's a big similitude. And in this history here this is the history of Pope Pius XII, Pacelli, and this is the history of several popes. And in this history you have this development of a reform line which is trying to push forward through the Vatican II, and then you have the forces that hold against it, do not push forward. And this is the Pope John Paul II, and then Benedict, and then you have now a Pope which is accepting, and he's accepting this message and put it in practice. What does this mean? What does it mean? What conclusion would you come to if you would see now that you have a Pope, John Paul II, who was against Vatican II. Then you have Benedict, who's against Vatican II, and then you have now Francis, who's in favor of Vatican II. What impact could this position have for the history of the Catholic Church? Fulfillment? Who's saying it? Fulfillment of what?
Of the Vatican II agenda.
Of the Vatican II agenda. And then, what is the Vatican II agenda for?
Complete.
To complete? To complete what?
Complete control over the whole world.
Yeah. So this agenda is an agenda to once more push forward and accomplish the plan of the Catholic Church to rule the world. Yeah, it is as you said at the beginning, it is a council that developed methods of how to get to the world, of how to make a counter-reform to get the whole world. But since there was resistance, it could not be accomplished, although it was partially accomplished by John Paul II by conquering the King of the South. But there's still a way to go. And when you now have a Pope who is pushing this agenda, look, this is from 1962. It's a long way into this council. There's a rebellion in the Church to push forward the message, which has been decided by the Church. The Church has been decided they will proceed this way. You know? This is how we're going to do mission. This is how we're going to behave. This is how we're going to organize us, because this is about organization. It's a reorganization. Let's put this here. 1863 is organization. Vatican II is reorganization of the Church. And likewise, 1863, we have a rejection of prophecy. What you have here, here's a rejection of prophecy. Same thing. Does this make sense so far? So, if we want to conclude, John Paul II rejects, Benedict rejects, and Francis accepts. So what does this tell us? Or what outcome could this possibly have? To accomplish the final plan, yeah? So now everything is good. Thumbs are up in every sense. Everything runs correctly. So this Pope, what else do we need? What else does the Church need than a Pope who fulfills the message and fulfills the reform in the Church? Okay, so this Pope, he'll bring the Church to success. This is something that Sister Tess has been saying, that she sees in this Pope really everything, he's done everything correct. And it seemed that he says something that he will only be 2 or 3 years in office. Remember that? Yeah. In the beginning, he says, after 2 or 3 years I renounce. It doesn't seem to be so, right? He's already longer into his term, and he's old, but he's not old enough to give up his job. He makes everything correct. And Jesuit is not such an important, it doesn't have this importance for us as it had for other people, like the conspiracy theory importance. The Jesuits, the evil order, those that have the power to control and rule. No, this is not the perspective that's interesting for us. The perspective is this prophetic perspective that he is fulfilling the desire that was pushed forward in the Vatican II. Which ultimately, of course, we all understand is the devil who's ruling this church and pushing forward what they have to do. He understands the message, he pushes this forward. Okay, and this is here, I read a little bit about it from, this is a Catholic news website, cruxnow.com, affirming the critically important role of a free and responsible form of Catholic theology in the life of the Church. Now, this sounds positive, yes? Vatican II, free and responsible theology. Pope Francis called on theologians to remain faithful and anchored to the vision of Vatican II. So he has not forgotten. 2017, he says, we have to remain faithful. So let's return to what we have established. He brings the Church back to this agenda, to the vision of Vatican II, as well as immersed in the instincts and concerns of ordinary people who've never taken academic courses in theology. But this is the strategy, get to everyone now, to the lay people. He not concerned about the professionals. He's getting concerned about the rest. The Second Vatican Council, Francis said, called the Church to announce the gospel in a new way, more consonant with a profoundly different culture and world. This is they adapt to the world, they adapt to the job that they got to do in this time period. And added, the Church must always refer itself to that event. Extremely important. Second Vatican Council. The effort requires from the whole Church, he said, and theologians in particular, to be implemented in a spirit of creative fidelity. For that reason, I ask you to continue to remain faithful and anchored in your theological work to the Council and the capacity of the Church demonstrated there to allow itself to be rejuvenated by the perennial novelty of the gospel of Christ. And in another event, and this was September 2018. So in September 2018, it's about here, right? He was traveling the eastern countries, and he took time to speak to young Jesuits. And there he said, there was a discussion, obviously, and the young Jesuit had questioned, he answered, and he said, on one of the points touched on by Pope Francis during the conversation was the importance of the encounter between young and old. When a young Jesuit asked the Pope how he could help him, so one of the Jesuits was impressed, he said, Pope, what can we do? How can we help you? This is what he said. Pope Francis replied that today we need to accompany the Church in a profound spiritual renewal. I believe, he said, the Lord wants a change in the Church. Yeah, so we understand this now, what he's referring to. The change that should have come did not come. Because the popes before him were against the change. So now he says, no, it's time, we have to fulfill. This is something like here, we have to fulfill the message. And he continues, I believe the Lord wants a change in the Church. Historians say it takes 100 years for a council to be applied. So we are halfway there. Then he added, if you want to help me, act in such a way as to move the Second Vatican Council forward in the Church and help me with your prayer. All right, so not for nothing. So this is more important than we thought, than we knew. This is their message. This is the reform message they have. And this Pope is going to put it in practice. Now we're going to close the connection to our movement or to our line. And then you have Pope Benedict. Benedict, he renounced as a pope. And one of the things that he agreed on is he will not intervene with the new Pope. He will not go against his agenda. Right? He will leave him making his job. He will not step in. He will respect. But recently, he stopped to do that. And this is from an article in the New York Times last month. It says, the former pontiff who declared he would remain hidden to the world. Yes, all of these terms are interesting for us, Maybe we can dig out more, that he remains hidden to the world. When he became the first pope in 6 centuries to abdicate in 2013, has released a 6,000 word letter. 6,000 word letter. It's not a small letter, It's a book, right? 6,000 word letter that puts the blame for the clerical sexual abuse crisis in the Roman Catholic Church on the sexual revolution of the 1960s. The disappearance of God from public discourse in the West and what he considers dangerously liberal theological ideas. What are the liberal theological ideas? That eroded morality after the church reforms of the Second Vatican Council. So he made it very his anger with the Second Vatican Council. This is what brought in all the mess into our church, he says. It's responsible for the mess. So he's obviously, clearly standing against the Second Vatican Council. Although Benedict wrote that he gave his successor and the Vatican's Secretariat of State a heads up above the letter, it amounted to the most significant undercutting yet of the authority of Pope Francis, who was instead blamed a systematic abuse of power and an unhealthy adoration of authority within the church hierarchy for the crisis. Okay, so this is interesting. This is very interesting for us. So now you see that Benedict 2018, he stands up and he intervenes. And he declares this Pope being on the wrong course. The Pope who is correct, he says he's not correct. Why is this interesting for us? Because what Brother Jeff shared at the last camp meeting, he draws some conclusions from this study. He made some applications. He said, if you put another line here, and I put it down this line, actually you should add it here if you would have space, but probably you draw it as I did. If you put here another line, then you have our movement. And in our movement, you have the same development here. You have an increase of knowledge, and you have 2 men. One man representing Miller or Butler, holding to the old view. This is Brother Pippinger himself. And then you have the young man, the new messenger of the movement, Parminder Bryant. All right? And what Jeff realizes, you can see the half wrong, half right issue with these brethren. He himself acknowledges that he was half right on the issue that appeared 2012, where Brother Parminder said that in 2014 there will be a Sunday law, or the Sunday law. And Brother Jeff said there will be no Sunday law. So he was right on that, because there was not the national Sunday law. But he acknowledged that he was wrong because he rejected the methodology. He rejected the time setting. This was the issue. So he acknowledged that he was half right, half wrong on the issue. In the same time, Parminder was half right, because we realize now that 2014 indeed, I think I should put, anyways, 2014 here, that indeed there was a Sunday law, wasn't it? Was there Sunday law? Was there no Sunday law? Yeah, I think this is something perhaps you're studying out. You're studying this. You will study this line. You don't. I don't know. The priest.
I think we'll have to know.
Perhaps we have to. No, we have to understand why this is. There is a Sunday law, right? Was there a Sunday law? 2014. All of us were there at some point. So there is a Sunday law that we mark prophetically. We can really definitely mark a Sunday law. For what line do we mark a Sunday law here? Of the priests. The priests had their Sunday law in 2014. We had our Sunday law already in 2014. So this was correct. Pippinger believes it. We believe it. We understand it. But he said that Parminder was incorrect because he said this would be the national Sunday law. Right, so both of them were half wrong and half right. Okay, this is the whole logic, the end point of the study. And this is what was pointed out. And when I first saw it, I thought, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Yeah? Seems to be correct. And now we're getting to the conclusion of this study. What I'm trying to show now is that this is not a correct application. Because we have developed in our movement, we are at a point in time where we do not only have the parallel lines. The parallel lines are the basic for our movement. We need the parallel lines to come to conclusions. But we have more techniques to discover truth. The parallel lines is not everything. There's a parallel that you can show and it makes sense. This is parallel, everything is parallel, yes. But there's more to it. It's not only parallel lines. In order to see if this is correct here, we bring in this. There's another logic that we need to see, and this logic is the logic of lines of, how we call it, lines of failure and lines of success. So let me illustrate this in a different line. Can I take this away? So if you think about the leaving of Babylon in the Bible history, where's the first time that God's people had to leave Babylon in Bible history? I didn't get it. Say it again. 450. The year. Okay, 457. Is this the first time they left Babylon? Or did they leave Babylon before? They had left before, sister?
Egypt? Left Egypt?
They left Egypt? Isn't this a type of Babylon? Yeah. So we have Moses when they left Babylon. Then we have, who we put here? What name we put here? What leader or what reform line is this where they leave Babylon the second time? In terms of the reform lines that we have. Huh? It's Ezra's, right? Is it Ezra? Yeah, I think so. Let me just double check. Yes. And then we have another leaving of Babylon. Old Testament, New Testament. Think about reform lines. Now, this is the first reform line. The beginning of ancient Israel. This is the end of ancient Israel. And then you have another beginning of modern Israel, which is the next leaving of Babylon. Which line is this? The beginning of. Oh, sorry. So this is the beginning. The end of ancient Israel. I wanted to say. This is not the end of ancient Israel. The end of ancient Israel. What line ends ancient in Christ? Sorry, a little bit confusing here. Getting this in order. So you agree? Can you see that on all of these steps, God's people left Babylon, right? When they left Babylon here, when they left Egypt, how were God's people afterwards? Did they fulfill the plan of a perfect people reflecting Christ? No. So we say this is a line of failure. The line, this reform line, is a line of failure. When they left Babylon here, were they reflecting Christ perfectly? Was it a perfect? No, it's a line of failure. They managed physically to leave Babylon. They managed physically to leave Egypt here. But they were not in harmony with the message. They did not understand, they did not fulfill the message, they did not reflect Christ. What about this message here? Did Christ accomplish that they leave Babylon? Did he manage to set up a people who reflected him perfectly? Yes. Of course. So this is a line of success. So when we deal with parallel histories, there's also this logic that comes in. This is other logic that we need to bring now together with the logic of repetition of history. It's not only history repeating. I brought this problem here. This is ancient Israel. Okay, when we speak about modern Israel, then we also have three histories. So as the brother said already, modern Israel, first history is Millerites. Was this a line of success? No, we already said they did not have a perfect message. There was an issue. So this is a line of failure. The next line is we had seen here, right? 1888. What about that line? Is it a line of success? Did the church? No, it did not fulfill, it did not understand, did not accept. And then how many lines are there afterwards? There's only one, right? There's the line of the 144,000. Will this line be a line of failure as well? No, this is a line of success. Okay, so when you now come to this history, what history is this here of Pipinja and Parminder?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so if now bring these models together, yes, there are these steps, there are these two men, and these two men, by the way, are counterfeited by these two men here. Where did I put them? Benedict and Francis, right? Where in some way Benedict throws his mantle on Francis. He makes way for a successor, by decision, not by death, all right? So you have this parallel also in this line. So when you apply this, how do you relate to this history now? Can it be that there is an error here in the logic of when you implement this logic here as well? No, why not? Say it again. It is a line of success. It must end successfully. It cannot be that the reformer here brings in a wrong message or not fully correct message. Like in this history, and this is then the last line that we could put here, the counterfeit line, you have John Paul, you have Benedict, and you have Francis. Failure. Obviously a failure because the church did not rule the world yet. Benedict, failure, same thing. And this must be a line of success. Okay? So what we are saying, if we make this type of application, and I've been saying this this morning. This study shows us methodology. Okay, this is the thing. We're not trying to. It's not what the issue with all these errors is that we have in our movement is a methodological error. We did not understand something correctly. Something is not understood. And what we have here, the message has been progressive. We have been understanding more things. And this logic, when did it come into our movement? Have you been hearing this in the past, in the last years? Since when do we know this? When have you heard this the first time? Today. All right. I heard it the first time a couple of days ago. But this is part of the Midnight Crime message. But the Midnight Crime message is something that will accomplish something in our movement that we need still to accomplish, that we need still to correct. So this logic is a logic that corrects some things. If we would, we could say it in a way that's a little bit derogatory. It was a little bit too simple how we studied our things. A little bit too simple how we come to certain conclusions. We need more witnesses. All right. There's more than the witness of the parallel lines. There's also this witness here. We need to bring them together. And if we bring these lines together, these logics together, then we have to come to a different conclusion here. In this line, we cannot say that Bayant was wrong. We have to say that he had a correct message. Not partially correct, but fully correct. Okay? And what is the problem with this? Do you have any problem with this? What is the problem with this? You feel free to say his message was totally correct, 100% correct? Paminda Bayant. In 2012, saying Sunday law comes in 2014. Why you hesitate? No.
I mean, he was not correct. It's not program operating.
This is the thing. You know, I understand that by it's logical to us to say he was not totally correct because there was no Sunday law. There was no national Sunday law in 2014. Yes, but prophetically, we have shown that he must have been correct. So how can we put this in harmony?
But did we say that that Sunday law for the feast for online was in 2014 or 2012?
2014.
So if he said it was 2012.
No, he said in 2012 that it will be in 2014.
2014, yes, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any idea how to resolve this? How can we harmonize that he has been saying this, but at the same time we have an issue saying that there was a Sunday law? Well, one thing that this Tess is pointing out in this line, when Snow predicted this date and event, was he able, or would he have been able to understand, to interpret the event correctly?
No.
No? The event, not the date. Why was he not able? Why would he have been able?
Why would he have been able, or why wasn't he able?
Why did he not? Would he have been able to predict the correct event also? Why do you think no?
The Lord hadn't revealed it. The Lord hadn't revealed it.
Okay, the Lord hadn't revealed it, but it's not the Lord that he's not allowing him to see the truth, right?
It's preconceived ideas.
Okay, but if it's preconceived ideas, what does it mean? That he could have, in theory, found out the truth. Why could he could have understood the truth here? Did he have the material? Did he have access? Did he have discovered the correct things in order to make a correct prediction on the event?
Yeah.
You think so? Why?
Like the scriptures are there, and it's just what my brother said. What I think about he get preconceived the things that he needed to unlearn for him to be able to come to a correct conclusion about the event. And one of them was that the earth was the sanctuary.
What was the problem? Why did they think Christ would come to the world, to the earth?
Because they thought the earth was a sanctuary.
Earth was a sanctuary. What was the problem with this interpretation?
Which it is in a sense, but not in this context. It is not in the context of the prophecy of the 2300-day prophecy. It was not the sanctuary.
So what problem did they have here theologically?
So it's the methodology that was incorrect. I mean, or misapplication of. I mean.
Is a wrong application?
The methodology was right, but I think what maybe the method, the way they interpreted what they knew.
Why could they understand it afterwards? Was there a big change in methodology?
God revealed it to them, and they went back and rehashed it out. I mean, they went back and tried to figure it out after Snow got the vision. Because it's not like he just got
This is historically, this is correct. But what I'm trying you to see is, he could have understood it. It was not that he was such in a wrong system of interpretation of theology, right? This is what you want to say?
What I want to say is that it's like exactly what you said, that we cannot just depend on the parallel lines to be able to come to correct conclusions. There are other techniques, there are other ways, like other lines that we can bring to each to be able to understand something correctly. And I think for that time, maybe they depended maybe on just the line of the 2,300 day 457, and they did not take into consideration that there's another line that is showing the Christ heavenly.
Basically, what Snow did, he did not think about what Miller said. He did not deal with this conclusion Miller came to. He accepted it. He did not go further and dig deeper into this, if this is correct also. He just acknowledged it and he said, okay. So he just looked at the date, you know. He could have. There was not a methodological barrier for him not to come to this conclusion. You know, there was no wrong methodology. They had to be removed in order to see it. They did just where you want to say it like derogatory, like lazy, you know. They could have understood it. They could have digged deeper. They could have come to this conclusion. They didn't, because they relied on the first messenger. They just accepted what he said. They took it for granted and they took it further. All right, so he could have. This is what I'm trying to say in this history. Here, obviously, as well. Yeah, there was no obstacle for. They had Ellen White. They had Ellen White, who was endorsing what Wagner and Jones were saying, so they could have understood it easily. They were just sticking to the old ideas, right? But here in our movement, what about this situation? Well, I'm already pushing your thoughts into one direction, but how you see this situation here? What about Parminder Bryant being able to understand 2014 was not the national Sunday law for the church in 2012? What about him not being able to see it was the Sunday law for the priests?
Maybe we were doing the same thing they did, which was just depending on one line or the previous line, because isn't that how we came to that understanding, going back to the history of the Milonians?
On one level, yes. On one level, yes, accepting what has been established, taking it forward, you know, giving a date. But there's some other development here in this history.
There's no development of the priests, Levites, and Methodists, right?
The understanding that there are three lines. When did this knowledge come into our movement?
2014.
It was later. So there was definitely a huge a big new understanding that he couldn't have had. He did not have this. The Lord did not show us this issue. we also can recall it like fractals, right? The whole thing of we didn't have this concept. We were struggling with the lines. There was something that we could not really bring together. And he predicted the correct event. He corrected the date correctly, but he did not have the words, the correct words, to say this is the son-in-law of the priests, because the movement had no knowledge at all about priests, Nethinims, and Levites. Or for this reason, we have to come to the conclusion that this messenger was not half wrong. He was 100% correct in this message, right? And then you can bring this in harmony with this logic here, and this is a line of success. No, there's no wrong message. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions here on that? All of that, what we have been studying. Say it again?
But that would be the same for Pippin's stance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're so what I'm saying is if you're considering Parmender's, I call it stance, what his view was for what it really is in relation to what we're trying to establish, then he was also right in the same way Pippin would have been right in what he was explaining, because he didn't have any more, like the way you said it, he didn't have a better way to say what he was saying. He just said what he knew with the information that was there available at the time, or with the light that had been reviewed at that point in time.
So none of them was half right and half wrong. Both were
Essentially, yes.
Correct.
Right.
So how can Pippinger be correct saying about there's no time setting when the other messenger says there's time setting? What do the others say? Sister, you have an opinion on that?
Have a complete understanding.
When did we come
Huh?
to that?
He didn't have a complete understanding. But what we have been, what is the defense for that we bring in for Parminder? What is the defense? Why do we say he couldn't have framed it in the correct words?
Because he did not know about the message of the 3 lines.
Yes, this message wasn't opened up. He did not have the tools, the words, the dictionary, the correct dictionary to say what Sunday law this would be, right? But if Parminder Bain was able to set time, this means that the movement was put in a place where it was able to set time.
Time was
Even
being
without
opened
knowing.
up right then.
Time was being opened up, all right? And then in theory, Brother Pippinger and any one of us, and I remember that myself, I wrote Brother Parminder an email and said, brother, you're wrong, remember this and that. I engaged, I participated also in the opposition, right? Because I was also in this movement a little bit before I entered it, and I understood. I was defender of the old, traditional view. So we could have understood it. We had, like, Parminder could understand, he understood it, why the others not, right? So we had the tools laying around, we didn't take them into our hands. We did not apply them. So there's a message that was wrong, there's a message that is correct. The movement has to choose which message to take and then go forward. So this message comes in because it corrects something that was wrong, like the Midnight Cry is doing now. Any questions? Comments?
We have a comment. So it's not so much that when Pippinger was saying that it was incorrect because he was not able to put it in the correct words. So it's not so much that, because obviously, yes, there was not a national assembly law that happened, but it's more the fact that Parminder was actually able to time set, even, I should say, regardless of the fact, or in spite of the fact that he did not even have the way to say, it's going to be assembly law for the priestly rights and all that. We didn't have that. But it's more about the fact that he was actually able to time set correctly. And it's not so much that there was not a national assembly law, because I think we all know that that's still in the future.
Yes.
So the focus it's not on that, but it's more that, okay, this guy actually was able to time set and he was correct.
Yes.
So that is more of the focus, to take that and move forward with it.
Yeah, perhaps this is how we can say it.
You want to say.
Yes, perhaps this is how. And if you have heard Brother Pilger does not present this issue as something to downplay Brother Parminder at all. Yeah, he's not using this and to say, "Hey, you see, guys, I wasn't that bad at all." You know, nothing like that. In total respect, he just brings in this logic that he's seeing. You know, and he puts it in parallel to this history, and there are other conclusions that he draws from this, but it's not in any way that he's trying to downplay Brother Parminder. He's fully acknowledging his role. But Sister Tess is making this application, this parallel that I just said, right? Benedict throws his mantle on Francis. Pippingem throws his mantle on Francis. Pippingem his mantle on Bayern, I'm sorry. And then, what does Benedict do here? 2018. I see you, my brother. Hmm? No, we just read an article. Yeah, he wrote the 6,000 word letter where he comes out of his hidden situation and he opposes Francis. He opposes the correct message. This was it was the biggest attack since, you know, on the movement. How does it say? I just read it again. The most significant undercutting yet of the authority of Pope Francis. And Sister Tess, what she's doing is, she says, what Brother Jeff has done, what he just has done, is similar to this. When he brings in the logic that Parminder was half wrong, then this is the most significant undercutting of the message that he has brought in. All right? Yes, you want to say something?
Just the way I'm understanding the conclusion is that with the methodology, parable teaching techniques that we have right now, we can prove 2014. We can prove that prior to 2014 there was no time setting. Then after 2014, when the time setting came into the movie.
2012, the time setting came in.
So after, so prior to 2012, there was no time setting. Yes, and after 2012, time setting came into the movie. So all I'm saying that with the methodology that we have, then we can be able to prove that the argument for the 4,000 movement is successful all the way.
Yeah, I don't know if we can say that there's not time setting before, because we set time 2001. It's also a time setting. It is a time setting of a time, even if we did it afterwards. But this happened. But it becomes a test with this 2012. So we have to accept it or reject it.
So it becomes a test.
It becomes a test. This is how I understand it. And bring this study to an end, or to a conclusion, I think it's not about what Jeff said, because Jeff is not in opposition to Parminder at all, you know, not at all. He's endorsing, he's totally, fully supportive of him. But the thing is methodology. You know, we have now more tools in our hands to understand, to see the truth. There's not only parallel lines, which is impressive. Then we have the dates that we put there, the years. It is impressive. There's something kind of not easy, but it's kind of easy to see, yeah. But then we can go one step further, and we have this here as well. So we need to bring this together. And when we bring these methodologies together, then we stand on a firmer platform than we have been standing before. We thought we have been standing on firm platform. Now we understand it wasn't that firm at some points, and now it is a firmer platform that we can rely on. All right? We'll close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, we praise you. We see your hand. It is impressive to live in a time where we can see how you guide your church, how you direct us. With patience and love, you give us this time, and you open our eyes to be fully equipped, to be ready, Heavenly Father, for the events that are about to happen. to integrate your army, to take a message to the world. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much. In Christ's name we praise you. Amen.